G'day everybody, it's me again. Been really bloody busy the last few days. Lots of trucks, lots of lots of trucking work I should say. Lots of other bits and pieces going on. I got Pete to press the new bushes into this kingpin setup for me. So I'm just going to need to give these bushes a bit of a clean. Make sure it's looking all good. Yep. And then I'm going to be greasing them up. Got a bit of multi-purpose grease here. That's the new kingpin. What I'm going to have to do is put it all together on the hub and then knock it in. I'm trying to show you here. It's all in pieces still. That joint there was an absolute bastard to get apart. I had to borrow Pete's big heating tip for the oxy and basically had to heat that until most of this was all glowing red. And then I got Dad to give it a whack from the side while I was still heating it. And luckily it came off. So yeah, that was a big problem. That was, it was stuck good. As you can see, the amount of heat used, you know, just everything's burnt and all the oil and whatnot around is a bit shit now. It's all going to have to be cleaned up really well before it goes to the pits. Maybe even give it a whack of fucking black on top. See how I go with that. As you can see, all the poor tools have just been sitting out here in the rain for the last couple of days. I've been a bit, you know, busy and ignoring the job. So yeah, I'll stop the video here for the moment and I'll start putting this together a bit. There is actually a measurement that I have to do. I've already sort of done it. I'm just going to see how it fits. Each one of these different sized rings that they give you will give a different clearance to the bearing. So I've got to make sure that gets right. What I'm going to do is put the old one back in place temporarily, see what the clearance was, measure it with a caliper or the what you call the feeler gauges, and figure out the distance and then try and get it as close as possible with the new one. I think the new and old bearing are exactly the same because they're both factory, so that might not be such an issue. You see rain's gotten into everything, so I'm going to have to give everything a good clean and re-grease before it goes back together. Some of the parts aren't being reused, like the pin. That was the other annoying one that got stuck on me. That's the new one. And bits and pieces, parts, seals. That's one of the top caps. It's the old top cap, new top cap. There's a little spot here to let grease out, I think. Got to let air in. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to figure out how it goes, but I'm going to replace everything. And should be all good. So I'll just stop this for the moment and keep going. Alrighty, I got a little bit carried away. I've got the lock pin in. It didn't really want to go in too well, but it's in, it's locked, everything's solid. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to pump it up full of grease until grease starts coming out the top and the bottom, and make sure that it's all lubricated properly. Don't want to fuck that up. Make sure there's no sand and crap in there. The bearing, I ended up having to use the smallest size that I had. I tried to do measurements and the clearance in there is so small it was almost impossible to measure. But I ended up having to use the smaller size just to get it together. It wouldn't go together otherwise. It was, well, you wouldn't be able to knock it in there. So it's all kind of gone back together well for me. I'm happy with the result so far. I think it'll be a keeper. I don't think I'll have any issues majorly. Put new grease nipples in, as you can see. The more fun and games is going to be, well, it's not really fun and games, it's just time. Is putting it all back together. Like the brakes and all of that. It's not hard, just time. Funny part is I tried to separate that tie rod end for some time the other day, and I tried heating, bashing, lubing, all sorts. It just wouldn't bloody budge. The bastard just would not budge. And then today, while I've been mucking around here, it just fell out of its own accord. So I just don't get it with machines sometimes. Things just happen strange. Anyway, so far so good. I'm very happy with the progress that's happened. There's been no major snags. Everything's sort of held together properly. Well, not held together, gone together I should say. You know, no issues with threads or anything like that, so I'm just going to have to keep going with it and yeah, soldier on, and probably have the wheel back on in a couple of hours and be able to drive it out of my workshop area here. Get started on that bloody forklift. Anyway, here we go. Oh, well, I'm getting even closer. Got the tie rod back in on the drag link. I'm fairly confident all my clearances are correct because grease is coming out of the bearing. So that means that it's able to lubricate, so that's a good sign, I think. I've actually pumped the whole thing full of grease now. when I tightened up the bottom, it pushed a whole bunch of grease up, out and through, so I know it's full. I also pumped this top grease nipple until grease started coming out the top of the whole joint. So I'm fairly sure I'm really full of grease. It's all nice and clearanced and good because I'm getting grease out. I'm happy, I'm very happy. I've done kingpins before, but only on much smaller vehicles, and they didn't seem to be anywhere near as complicated as this. It was almost like, you know, insert grease and forget, you know, older cars. Yeah, so far so good, very happy. I've already said that, but I'm saying it again. So it's now time to put the brakes back together. That's probably the most time consuming bit, is to put the rest of this back together. It's just fiddly, put the brakes back on, all that. I'll show you as I go, as always. And yeah, let's go. Yeah, well there we go guys, the brakes back on, or brakes back together. I'll pack that bearing fairly full of grease, plus some extra, gave it a bit of a clean. I'll do the same here. I've repacked the outer bearing as well. Cleaned up all the bits. Caps and all the bits and pieces. There's the other bearing, re-greased. All bits and pieces. And almost there. Just gotta lift this drum on. Usually you can use 2 hands, 2 knees and a bit of a swearing and she'll go on. So it's not so big, this one, not so heavy. Anyway, I'll probably leave this video at that for the moment. There's other stuff to do this afternoon. And thanks for watching, and I will do a final update on this once it's back on the road.